Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching and listening to the podcast. Tell me your story. Welcome back. Whoa, yeah. Whoa. Today's special guest is Marc, the one fun guy from the podcast, right? Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
Get a live audience in here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird not doing my introduction, right? I feel like I should do the "What's up, everybody? One fun guy podcast in the studio." It's so weird having when somebody else does their intro,
I know. It's like, wait a minute.
right?
All right, let's jump into this, Marc.
Perfect.
Where does it all begin for you?
So my podcast journey started. Well, it technically started January 24th of 2024. However, the journey into it was actually started long before that. So I ended up getting really sick in it's still bouncing around. Anyways, so I ended up getting sick in 2019, and I was kind of bedridden for about 7 months, and it went all the way to 2022. So I had a plethora of surgeries, and I had, a whole bunch of health issues, and they're all in the past now. I've recovered and I've gotten better, but you just get tired of watching TV, right? And so I started getting into podcasts more and more just because I couldn't get comfortable. I'm laying in bed. I had no rest. This is gonna drive me nuts, this bouncing back and forth. But if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I don't know how to fix
Yeah,
it.
it's cool.
It's like just swimming. I'm like trying to sit still here, and I'm like fidgeting around. But anyways, going back to the journey, I started watching more and more podcasts, and I came across a podcast called Cleared Hot with Andy Stumpf. And he was like a military guy, and he would have all his like Navy SEAL buddies and stuff on it. And one of the shows he had Sean Ryan on, and I didn't know who Sean Ryan was. And so obviously I Google Sean Ryan, and he's another Navy SEAL, and he's got like, this incredible military history and CIA contracting history and all this stuff. So I started watching his podcast, and it was Vigilance Elite. So obviously, like, shout out to Sean, or I think it's on this side. But Sean is what got me into podcasting. So like watching his podcast, I was like, listen, this is something I can really kind of do, right? So as I started getting healthier and started to become myself more and more, I was kind of always had the idea of doing a podcast in the back of my mind. Some people's creative outlets are playing an instrument or doing, something of artistic ability. And I didn't have any of that, right? So I always loved music, but I never played an instrument. My sports years were long behind me, right? So like, other than just, the simple working out and trying to, do physical therapy and recover and all of that stuff, it basically turned into a kind of a routine for me. So fast forward to 2024, about January 11th, I go to South Carolina, and I'm at my buddy Tanner's house, and he has this retreat, and all of these business people are in it. And my journey started from there. So he goes home and he asks everybody, he goes, and this is just like a business exercise, right? A lot of businesses will do this, and a lot of trainees will do this. But they go around the room and they ask yourself, if you were to die tonight, if tonight was your last night on earth, what do you regret and what would you change? And so going around the room, everybody's given the typical answers. I would spend more time with my kids. I would spend more time with my family. I would have taken those dream vacations. I would have splurged and bought the bigger house. I would have splurged and bought the nicer truck. I would have, had all these upgrades to whatever it is, right? So everyone's kind of going around, and I just happen to be sitting in the chair all the way to the right. So I'm like, out of, let's say, 20 people, I'm the last one to go. And so it gets to me, and he goes, all right, you're up. And I was like, I don't regret anything. I'm like, I lived an awesome life. I would die happy. I have my dream job. I've gotten to do everything that I've wanted to do in life. I've accomplished. From everything that I've set my mind to, I was able to do it. I have an awesome house. I have an awesome truck. I have an awesome family. I was like, I did everything I've ever wanted to do. So I would just be content. I'd be peaceful. And so everyone was kind of like, well, holy shit, how in the world is this like happening, right? And that was my honest answer. I was totally content. So then everyone's just kind of like staring at me, and I was like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't really have any regrets. And everything I've ever wanted to do, I've been able to travel. I've been very lucky. I've gotten to see some really cool places. I've gotten to do some really cool things. I've met some really cool people. So I had nothing left on the table. I'm like, this is it for me, right? I'm good to go. So as we continue this kind of thing, and shout out to Tanner and Jess, by the way, with Muse Media. But anyways, um, we go around again, and they said, if you wanted to start a new project, what would it be? And so everyone in the thing is, oh, I want to get my business booming. I want to do more marketing. I want to sell myself. I want to, and so everyone is doing the business stuff. And I said, I want to start a podcast. And he was like, you seriously? I go, yeah, I've always wanted to do it. And I just never really had the means to do it or the time. But that would be my goal for 2024 is to start a podcast. He goes, well, I'm holding you to that. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to start a podcast. I go, I have no social media presence. And he's like, well, you're going to get one tonight. So I got on Facebook. I changed all of my stuff on Facebook. I started a TikTok. I started an Instagram on my own under my podcast. And so I was like, all right, now what? And he's like, you come up with a name. And I was like, all right, well, I'm on the spot. So I'm like, it's going to take me a while to come up with a name. So I go to the drawing board, and literally every name I wanted was taken, right? I'm looking in the registry for trademark and for every name that I could think of that sounded cool, from like wrestling stuff to like, sports stuff. Everything is taken. And I'm like, well, obviously I can't infringe on anybody's name, because if I ever got successful, I wouldn't want somebody to come back and sue me and say I had the name first. So I work with a guy, and his license plate is One Dumb Guy. And I was like, I don't know why that kept sticking in my head, but I was like, you know what? I don't want to typecast my podcast into just being a this is X, Y, and Z. I wanted to have all walks of life, kind of like Joe Rogan, right? Where he can interview politicians, he can interview athletes, he can interview celebrities, actors, music, fighters, whatever, and not be typecast into one type of podcast. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So I came up with the name One Fun Guy. Go to the trademark registry, it's open. So I type my name in, and I click yes. Do I want to trademark it? $249 later, I click yes. I get all the paperwork in the mail, and here now I'm trademarked as the One Fun Guy. So now my next step is, obviously, I go to LegalZoom, right? And I want to make sure that all my bases are covered, that I don't get sued, I don't do anything that I'm not supposed to do, that anything's inappropriate. So I'm taking the very fine line into starting this so I don't get in any kind of trouble legally, right? So I go to LegalZoom, and actually, I would show you, I don't know if you guys can see it behind me here, but my picture was a memoji of myself that I created. And so I go to LegalZoom, and LegalZoom says, let's see your logo. So I send my logo, and the attorney gets back to me and goes, do you realize that you have a memoji as your logo? And I go, yeah, I picked it out. It's me. He goes, who owns that? I go, me. He goes, no, idiot, Apple does. If you get famous, Apple's going to sue you. And I was like, so he goes, so I'm emailing back and forth with this guy. He was super cool attorney. I don't know who he is. He was out of Oregon, I think, or Washington State, or somewhere out west. He goes, go to any one of free logos and make your own logo. He goes, that way nobody can do no one can touch you. And I said, perfect. So I started off with arrows with OFG, and that was my thing. And I created it, and I was like, all right. So now I have this, and I'm like, but it doesn't say my name in it. I'm like, I don't know how to get around this, but like, if somebody took OFG with arrows, it could be anything, right? It could be one funny guy. It could be, one famous guy or anything, right? So I cropped my logo, the One Fun Guy podcast, with an old school microphone. And I put that in my logo, and that's how it all started. And that's where my journey picked up. Whereas I trademarked myself January 24th of 2024. And I had my logo and my trademark. And so now, as I start growing my podcast and getting subscribers and people sending me stuff on TikTok and all this other kind of stuff, I realized that if I'm going to start doing a vlog style podcast where I take it on the road with me, well, I might as well LLC it. So about a month ago, I LLC'd my podcast. That way now I can write off all my tax stuff off of it. Anything I do with my podcast, if I go record shopping, if I go, to a cool place, try new coffee, and I vlog from there and do it under my podcast. Now I can level myself. So that's pretty much where I'm at now. So that's kind of my podcast journey from where I initially started in 2024 to where I am in 2026.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your podcast. Explain to like people, so the watchers and listeners right now that have never seen your podcast, but they want to know more about it. Since you're talking about it, let's hear it. Like,
Sure.
so what were
So
you going through when you were bouncing ideas? Was it crime? Were you paranormal? What was going on?
it's funny. So my first ever podcast that I ever did wasn't even mine. I was a guest, and I Paranormal Joe actually had me on, and we started talking about like all these conspiracies, right? Alien life, what's in space, what's in Antarctica, the Anunnaki, right? All these alien beings, right? And I dove down that rabbit hole, right? So I started following Billy Carson a couple years ago, and I'm like into all this conspiracy theory stuff, right? Lizard people and everything else, right? So Joe's like, come on and be on my podcast. I'm like, awesome. So come to find out that he's related to one of my aunts through like marriage. So we kind of had this cool connection, and he showed me a lot to do with podcasting. So that was my initial podcast. But like I said before, I didn't want to be typecast in the one type of thing. So my umbrella was like a Joe Rogan philosophy or a Sean Ryan philosophy, where I could have guests of all walks of life. So obviously, like any other podcaster, I reached out to all my friends. I'm like, hey, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? Sure. So I had all my college buddies, I had my fraternity brothers, I had, guys that I used to work with, and everybody else from all walks of life on. So I didn't really have, I had more of a specific subject for my guest, right? So talking about mental health. If I have a musician, we talk about their band. If I have an artist, we talk about what they draw. I've had a poet on. So I didn't want to be typecast into any one type of kind of known description of a podcast, right? Because there's some people, all they do is talk about religion, all they talk about is music, all they talk about is sports. And I thought that that would get very heavy very quick. So I thought it'd be awesome if I could do all the stuff I love, right? So I'm like, what are my hobbies? I love music. I love watches. I love talking to people. I love sports, right? I played football in college. I played track and field, baseball. So I was like, I don't want to have any type of focus on my podcast. If I have a baseball player on, we're going to talk about baseball. If I have a football player on, we're going to talk about football. If I have a wrestler on, we're going to talk about wrestling, which I've had all of the above on my podcast. So for me, I was very lucky that I decided that I didn't want to be typecast. I didn't want to just talk about certain things and certain subjects. I wanted to talk about a plethora of things. And that's kind of where I was. And that's how I decided to come up with a name that wasn't very specific to what I was trying to talk about. So to answer your question, that was basically it. So I talk about everything, but it's a conversation style podcast like we're having. So just basic questions and answers, see where the conversation goes and see how it flows, and then kind of go from there. So that's kind of my philosophy. So I've had everybody from teachers to coaches to wrestlers, professional wrestlers to musicians, professional musicians. So I'm very lucky that I've met the people that I've met. I will say this to your listeners and to my listeners. If you haven't used TikTok, TikTok is a great networking tool. I hate it for everything else, but I love the fact that you can meet a lot of different people from a lot of walks of life, and you meet a lot of up and coming people, right? I only have 1,000 followers, but my band is awesome. And I'll send them a message and say, hey, do you guys want exposure? Be on my podcast. Sure, we'll set it up. Then they're on my podcast. So if you don't use TikTok for anything, use it for networking. It's one of the best tools out there.
Yeah, TikTok is like one of the places that you're
It's
gonna come across everybody.
it's the double-edged sword, right? Because you fall into it, right? And TikTok can consume you if you let it, but it's also the best place to meet people. Facebook is more your friends, your real friends. Instagram is becoming that way, but most people never check their messages on Instagram. So you send somebody a message on Instagram, they don't see it for days, right? So TikTok is pretty instant. You send somebody a message, they see it, they reply back. Now you have an interaction. Follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook, on YouTube, and any other platform that you have. But for me, TikTok has been my biggest asset in the podcasting world, in terms of finding people and like reaching out. And then obviously on Facebook, if you join the podcast groups, how we got connected, those help too. But you have to be very careful with those too, because a lot of times people go in and they try to steal your thunder. So you got to be careful, right? So
Yeah, they're gonna give you a good choice of words. You got to be careful when you're on
right.
any of the
So
platforms, really.
yeah, but it's all about promotion for me, right? Like I'm not here to steal anybody's guest or steal, like, if somebody says, "Hey, I saw your podcast," I hook them up. So what I do on Facebook is I say, "Listen, I've had this guest on my podcast, and I've had you on my podcast. I'll start a conversation with the three of us, and then let those two people talk, because I think they'd make a good connection in music or business or in life." So that's kind of how I do it. I'm here to promote everybody. Use me, abuse me, be on my show, share me out, whatever. But I'd rather have somebody make a connection in their business or their personal life that could help them out in the future, than to just be like, "Oh, you were a guest on my podcast. Now you're an afterthought." And most of the people I've had on, I've stayed in touch with, which is awesome.
That's what you want to do. That's what I do on this podcast as well. I keep in touch with everybody. And I'm pretty sure, like, after we're done with this, we'll still be in contact. We'll still be talking, chiming ideas back and forth,
Yeah,
helping each other out.
And yeah,
Having a laugh about the auto framing.
yeah, if you want to be a guest on my podcast, you're more than welcome to hop on. If you watched any of my YouTube stuff and you see a guest that you might like to have on, let me know. I'll set them up with you, and we'll go from there. I'm in the works now of getting Matt Zane back on my show. He's the Singer Society one. He's like a super controversial figure in the music world, and he's doing a project right now with Tara Ray and Wayne Static from Static X, and both of the estates have sued him with a cease and desist, and he's like, "Screw you, I'm going to do it anyways," and because that wishes. So I'm going to try to have Matt back on to talk about the process of making this film with those two. But he's probably been my most famous person. I had Casey Wright on. Casey was a wrestler back in the late 90s, early 2000s with WCW when they were doing the Monday Night Wars. So he was interesting because I'm a huge wrestling fan. So having him on and just hearing his stories about all the wrestlers and people he's met and contacts he's had was awesome. So he was a cool guest too. But yeah, I'm just trying to reach out to bands and musicians, artists, writers. My buddy Elliot was just on. He wrote a comic book. So that's kind of cool just to pick his brain about, why comics. I've been dabbling in the mental health thing a lot lately. It seems a lot of people want more of that kind of stuff. So I just did my first ever podcast where I had a group on. There were 6 of us besides me, and we all kind of talked about it. So it was pretty awesome. I've never done that before, which is really interesting. Have a panel on, because you kind of got to control everything and everybody and not let anybody overstep. But it was pretty interesting. So that was really cool.
Tell me a little bit about like what you were doing before podcasting. What was your career? What was going on in your life then?
So I mean, I'm still doing it, right? I'm in law enforcement, so that was always my thing. I'm happy. I have a great job. I just really didn't have any hobbies before that, right? It was just kind of doing my own thing. I like to fish. I like to be outdoors. I love road trips. I like finding new restaurants and new coffee spots, and everything that I was doing before the podcast, I'm still doing now. I just leverage my podcast against it. So now I start to vlog more. I'm able to be more focused on that. And like I said, LLCing my podcast now just one-upped me, because now anytime I do something for my podcast, it becomes a tax write-off. So but yeah, before
Yeah.
podcasting, I was just a normal person like everybody else, right? I loved watching podcasts. I love movies. I love music. I love going to concerts. And I've just incorporated my podcast into my life now. So everything that I've done before this has been the same thing I'm doing now, just with the podcast in it. So it's almost like a third job now, right? Like, so it's, you do your work, your family, and then the podcast. So it does consume a lot of my time, but now I've just decided to do more vlog style. So I definitely I love going out to concerts and I film them all. I try to talk to the bands to get them on my podcast. I tell the after the show, I'm going to post it. If you guys want to see it, use it. This is where it's at. You could take it from me. So it's been kind of a neat experience because now every time I go to a concert, I take everybody with me. So they get to watch it live like I'm watching it. So it's kind of a unique thing. Um, I've gotten a lot of people on TikTok that way. I'll go live and I'll have 400 people watching the concert that I'm at. You know, and so it's kind of a unique thing. And then I post it to my Facebook and I tag the band and I let them use it if they have a TikTok account. If they don't, I just link it to YouTube and I'll send it to them.
How many times has that like worked out for you? Like recording at a band that you're seeing, and they actually like reused the video.
Filth did the other day. They reposted my video. I used one of their songs, Chin Check, in one of my videos, and they reposted it. Matt Zane has done some stuff with Society One. He's reposted a lot of my stuff. The guys in who did I have on? Carcaza, Bruno and Lilia. They reposted all my stuff. I used their music in one of my clips, and they shared it out with everybody. They have Waking the Sleeper did the same thing. I've had Dylan on. Dylan repost all my stuff. I use their songs. My buddy Kelly, he's part of Arsenic. Kelly will let me use his songs and clips, and then I'll repost them, and then he'll share them, and then I'll share them too. So, Kelly and me did a podcast together called The Pod Cult, where we just talked about everything like hard rock and heavy metal, industrial music, and stuff like that. And we kind of take a little hiatus from it because he's actually working on an album himself. So once he's done with the album and he's going on tour and a whole bunch of stuff, so I'm like super proud of him. But anytime I can use somebody else's music and repost it and then tag them in it, it always is a benefit, because if they happen to come across it or they do see it, then they'll repost it, and then it just kind of shares me out, and that's kind of what I hope. So obviously my biggest reach has been Society One, right, with Matt. Matt's been on tour all over the world. He's performed in front of 80,000 people. He's got a huge following with him, and it's kind of awesome that with him it's perfect because his reach is far more than any of mine. So but yeah, so it just depends on who I have on it and what I use. And a lot of the concerts I go to, I'll tag them in it and I'll never get anything back, but at least I say I don't own the rights to the music, and then hopefully they'll use it. Now I went to see Buck Cherry, and I don't know if it's the real Josh Todd or somebody that made a profile, but I put the video on YouTube, and Josh Todd, the singer of Buck Cherry, liked it. So I don't know if it's him or just some fan that used his name in one of the fake accounts. But either way, that was kind of a. I hope it's the real Josh Todd. If it's him, I'm a huge Buck Cherry fan. But I don't know if it was him or a fake account. I can't tell, but it just said Josh Todd liked it, and I'm like, oh, awesome.
Yeah, they were actually just out here, I think, last summer. They were out here for Bike Week. They performed down here.
Yeah, and Stevie,
downtown Sandusky.
And Stevie D, their guitarist, grew up in Barrington, so he's a local Chicagoan, not quite the city, but it's close enough. So, say you're from Chicago, it's an outreach of probably 100 miles outside of the lake. But Stevie D's a local guy, so that's
you guys,
awesome.
Are you guys still considered the Windy City? Because we've been getting a lot of wind out here in Ohio,
and we're not the Windy City because of the wind. We're the Windy City because of all the corruption. That's so it's not. It does get cold and it does get windy, but the windy in Windy City is all about the politics and the corruption in them. Is how it was deemed the Windy City, not so much for the actual wind.
So now everybody knows for sure it's not actually about the wind.
Definitely know now. I mean, turn on the news and look at Chicago politics. It's not good.
You're like, wait a minute, wait.
Yeah.
It's not about the wind?
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, it's about the corruption out there.
That's it.
The wind, man,
is
not our problem. That's the last of our problems.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, though, with law enforcement,
yeah,
what have you come across paranormal-wise?
You know what? Not much, to be honest with you. I did
what?
say this on I did say this on the paranormal podcast. whenever there's a full moon, that is very real. Most people seem to go a little bit more crazy when the moon is full than when it's not. Um, my personal journey with it, I haven't seen anything outside of the norm, right? Most of my stuff comes through outside of work, right? So like, going out for like walks in nature and seeing shadows and like your mind playing tricks on you and what you think you see and watching the stars and being in nature, right? I love being outdoors. I love, doing all that kind of stuff. So seeing a lot of that is been kind of the realness of doing it when you're by yourself and what your mind sees. Obviously, I'm a huge horror movie fan. I love ghost stories. I love, anything to do with, like The Conjuring and all that stuff. But it's kind of weird because I find that in at least in my line of stuff, most of the things have been mental health issues, which is kind of what most skeptics will say that you're dealing with in those kind of situations, right? So is somebody really possessed by a demon, or do they have severe schizophrenia with a little bit of bipolar in there, and they think they're hearing things and seeing things that aren't there? And so that's kind of where faith and reality kind of intertwine, right? A lot of that stuff for me is more real on the mental health side of things than it is on the paranormal side of things. But I do keep an open mind, and I kind of believe in ghosts. I kind of believe in evil and demons and stuff like that too. But it's hard to face that when you're in a real situation and you're trying to get somebody to, you know, that isn't in the right frame of mind, to understand what you're trying to do, and you're only there to help them. And sometimes they don't want it or they don't see it. So for me, the paranormal stuff, I believe in it and I think it's out there, but like there also is a little bit of realism in that as well.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like you said, if stuff happens on a full moon night, it's a given. The kids go crazy.
Yeah.
They're all cranky. People are gonna be. I mean, you're gonna see domestic calls more than likely, more than ever on that night too.
And it's fun, and it's ironic that like when you start looking, like I said, I went down that rabbit hole with the earth and all of the stuff that we are where we're at today has all been changed throughout history, right? So I believe that the universe definitely has pull in what you're trying to do. People say you should say things out loud and manifest it, right? There's people that look in front of the mirror and say, I'm going to win the lottery. I'm going to win the lottery. I'm going to win the lottery. I'm going to win the lottery, right? So I think you have to have realistic goals of what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. But I definitely think words are powerful. And I definitely think the universe is a very unique plane. And I think that there's certain people that don't want us to be one with the universe like we used to be. I don't know if you follow the 28-day parallels, right? So they said there were 13 months of 28 days. Somewhere in the 1400s, they decided that they were going to go to a Gregorian calendar and get rid of that. Well, everything on the earth is based on 28, right? So 28 days, parallels. I believe there was a lot of stuff that was true back in the day, and they rewrote history to change it to where we're at now. So if you believe in, mysticism, right? I'm not saying witchcraft or sorcery or anything like that, but going back to the quote unquote pagan times, they followed a traditional 28-day calendar and they were able to harness the universe. They were able to use it, the magnetic force fields, the way that the sun and moon were in orbit, the stars in the sky, right? There was a lot of truth to that, and I think that that's been taken away from us because the earth is a very powerful source of energy, and I think people don't want you to embrace that. They want you to embrace their powers, right? So if you follow the rabbit hole and you can go down it, it's a very deep one. But I do believe that that's why there are certain nights and certain things that happen a certain way because of the Earth's pull in the universe. So
I was thinking as you were saying, like when you stand in front of a mirror and you're saying like stuff repeatedly over and over and over again. I was like, doesn't that kind of sound like witchcraft a little bit when you really think about it? Like you're kind of saying like a spell or something, like
and the thing is like what we know about witchcraft, right, is only what we're told, right? That people who had a different view of religion and a different view of politics and a different view of the world, they were burned at the stake, right? They were mistreated. They weren't, and so when you look at history, the way it was written and the way it was told, like, were they just people that had more knowledge of the universe, and the powers that be at the time didn't want them to have that, and so they were considered witches or sorcerers when all they were doing was harvesting the earth's power? So I don't know, right? And it goes back all the way to religious practices, right? To the time of Christ. And if you're Catholic or Christian and you believe in Jesus, he harnessed the powers too, right? So it's all kind of the way you want to believe religion is, right? I'm not saying that there's a guide or anything like that, but like, you know everybody that I know that is considered a Wiccan or a witch or anything like that, they're not anti-Jesus. They just source the universe for their power, which is, I think, what most religious people did back in the day, right? They whatever they had to use to help them, that's what they used, and the universe is a very powerful tool. And again, they all say, the powers of seven, right? If you say something seven times, if you think something seven times, if you believe it, then it comes true, right? So maybe people say it's a waste of time and it's an old wise tale, but it takes 10 seconds to say something seven times. So if you're going to do it, you know, they say that as long as you start manifesting ideas and you start putting it out in the universe, it works in your favor. So whether it's through prayer, whether it's through a faith-based, whether it's through, whatever, if you put it out there, things start to happen, and it's all what you believe, and it's not right or wrong, right? Like, I'm not saying if you practice Wiccan, you're nuts or you're crazy, but I'm very open-minded to a lot of different things, where back in the day you're taught that they were evil and that's mysticism and that's witchcraft and that's all. But is it really? Like, what we were told and what we grown to know now is a very different story, and you kind of have to figure out your own reality and your own belief system and your own thinking, and not just believe what a teacher told you or what a textbook tells you, because obviously we know that now those are very fictitious, right? Things were rewritten and changed throughout history, and nothing is as it was. And now you start to see these older texts coming out from our modern day encyclopedias, going back to what was and what really was, and how it was changed from the 1800s to the 1900s to now. You have three different versions of a story that you were told as a kid that you believed, and now it's all fake.
Yeah. And like,
So,
really getting more deeper into that, it's like once you actually start studying stuff and like really like getting yourself advanced into it, like you said, you get deeper and deeper into that hole.
yeah,
And then you
and
start
it's
learning more and more about stuff. You're like,
right, and
okay,
it's crazy
this
because
kind of makes sense.
I think AI is going to be a very powerful tool when it comes to telling the truth, right? Because people ask, you know, you'll go to Amazon and you'll ask Alexa, what is this? And she'll tell you, and she uses AI, and it's not what you think it is, right? And there's people that say it all the time, right? So I think that a lot of this stuff now is going to start to open the annals of history and what's really out there, right? And if you're going to start anywhere, start in Antarctica, right? Because what's out there is a complete myth to most people. But when you start digging and you realize that every country on the face of the earth has a military base in Antarctica, why is that? There's obviously something there. They wouldn't be interested in it.
To me, I find it like very interesting because I've had a lot of people actually talk to me recently about Antarctica. And there was actually, I don't know how deep your research is on that, but there was
Very deep.
a guy that went there. He was like a healthy dude he like discovered all this stuff, and he's telling people about like there's stuff here that can actually cure you,
It's
that would help
it's
you, and
Yeah, well, one of them was Admiral Byrd, right? So he had a heart attack
yeah,
out there, and he said that what was down there was evil, right? That you don't want to know what is out there, and they basically shut him up, and they said, "Listen, you can't tell anybody what you saw, what you think you see, right?" Then you start looking at the ice wall, right? And there's been people that have kind of gotten gutsy enough to go out there and see what's out there, right? How is there waterfalls in Antarctica, right? There's obviously something on the other side to make the water come through the wall. It just doesn't come out of nowhere. So what's on the other side? Like, what are they hiding from us that they don't want us to know? right? And so now you start to see a lot of these people, that once were considered conspiracy theorists and like, you're crazy, the world's not flat, it's round, and we're on an orbit like we always believe. And now you got people going out there saying, listen, there's something on the other side. So,
And
what
that's
do you believe? Do you believe NASA and what they've been telling you for the past 100 years, that the world is round and that we're on this orbit and that it's spinning at 1,000,000+ miles an hour, and that, like, or do you believe we're on a flat Earth and we're on an equal plane? And so, like I said, I don't know. I have an open mind, but all the people that said we lived on a flat Earth, everyone was like, "You are crazy, right? That is not." And now you probably have half the people are saying that we're flat Earth, and other people are saying we're. Before it was probably 90-10, right? The 10% of the people were probably like considered crazy, right? How do you think we're not on a rotating globe? That we have pictures of the moon, we have pictures of the stars, we have pictures of the Earth from orbit, right? And now they're saying that was all fake, right? That was all staged. They were all images that were created. It's not the moon we know. It's not real. Everything, we never went there. We never got out of our atmosphere. So now I think it's more probably 50-50 than it is, 90-10 or
yeah,
80-20, right?
that's like the ongoing question. It's like, dude, if the only way I can answer is if I go there myself. If
Yeah.
I go up
And it's
there and
awesome.
find out for myself.
And it's really fun to like read into it and like hear both sides, right? Because I believe in NASA, right? Like I believe in the space program and astronauts and stuff like that. But then I also believe the people that are basically saying, like, you've been duped your entire life, it's all a hoax. You only believe what the media and the books and NASA tells you. You have to dig deeper. So, like I said, do your own homework, do your own research. If you have time, there's plenty of places on social media where you can find theories that exist. And I like keeping an open mind. And I'm that way about religion. I'm that way about politics. I'm that way about a lot of stuff, right? Where, when you're a kid, you believe what you're told, and that's the way it is. And now, as you start reading into things, these theories come out that are much different than what we were told as juveniles. So I like it. It's fun to me, right? Like, I like reading about it. Some of them are corny and some of them are really out there. But you know what? That pushes the limit of thought, right? And process and what's really exists, and there's a lot to be said about, religion and what was here before, and God and the creation and all the other stuff, right? Because there are the Sumerian tablets, there are the Emerald tablets that predate any known religion, and they basically say that we were created by aliens, that they found Earth and they planted, they came here and that's how we started. So who knows, right? It's all, but you still have the Darwin theory, right? That we grew out of fish, right? That, through millions of years. I don't buy that theory at all. I don't really, I never have, right? I was born and raised Catholic, so I didn't believe it to begin with. But now hearing aliens coming in and using our DNA and twisting our stuff, and being Cro-Magnon and saying, listen, we're going to make you in our form, giants, right? That they were 17, 18, 19 feet tall, and that these, is it possible? Sure, right? And the tablets prove it, right? They say it. Giant beings came from outer world. Billy Carson's
Yeah,
really big in, and I don't know, like, if you know who Billy Carson is, but he's really big on the Anunnaki and like the alien wars, and that Earth was founded by aliens that left their other planet. I don't know how true that is, right? If we're not in a solar system, right? If we are on a flat Earth, then does that really exist, right? Does that, But
well,
people have
I would
made.
say the whole theory on aliens, though, it's always like, before you guys click off this video, stay here for a minute. Stay for
Yeah,
check this out. So aliens, it's always kind of people. I've always heard different theories where they go and talk about, just like how you said that they created us. But at the same time, I've also heard theories like this that actually got me thinking too, as well. The forbidden knowledge that
Yeah,
we have from the Garden of Eve. You hear of, being a Catholic, you heard about the war between good and evil, and then the fallen angels that have all this forbidden knowledge that are teaching us humans. And it also says in the written that if you were a Catholic too, you would see that it says that they had sex with the women. That's what
yeah,
created the giants.
Right.
So I mean, there's a lot of different theories on
So
this
it's
stuff.
it's interesting, right? So I was just at my buddy Joe's house, and he had I was there for work, and I stayed overnight, and he has an Ethiopian Bible, so I kind of read through it, and a lot of the texts that are in there basically say the same thing, right? That the fallen angels came, and that they were, kicked out of heaven, and that they landed on earth, and it's not really hell, but Satan is the king of our world, right? He's not the king of heaven. He got kicked out, right? He was, God's right hand angel, right? He was the angel that left, and he took 199 with him when he left. And you have, Gabriel and Michael stayed up, and all the rest of them came down, and that's, what you consider demons are today. Some people think that they never died, that they're still alive, that they've gone through history in the annals of taking souls and transferring bodies, and that they're still here till this day. So it's an interesting
Hold on.
thought process.
My biggest thing on that is the whole idea of the demons and everything. I actually heard another interesting thing about that is when the Noah's flood happened. So you had the angels, the fallen angels, having sex with the women, which created the giants, correct? And then, so that was the whole purpose of the flood, to wipe out all of that. It was all the destruction that was messing up creation. But they were in between. They couldn't go to heaven. They couldn't go to hell. So their bodies, their spirits got trapped here on earth. And that's what's created demons. That you heard Jesus himself at one time, if you read it, said he was, there's spirits out here in the desert trying to find a home. So when you cast them out of the person, they go back out to the desert and try to bring their friends back to an empty house and come into them. And I was like, that does make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And so people believe that like craters are not meteorites that fell from the sky, and they were the angels that fell. When they landed, they formed craters. And you look at the desert, right? And again, I hate to keep bringing up Billy Carson, but like, he says what's under the sand in the desert. He says it's glass, and then it's natural rock and stone. He goes, in order for that to happen, they have to burn at 3,000 degrees. He goes, that's a nuclear bomb. He goes, the only thing that's hot enough that would get to that point where you would find glass in the sand is heat. You need an abundant amount of heat in order to have that happen. And he said if you had an alien war and they had advanced weaponry, that they could easily do that. So it's kind of it's interesting for sure. I don't know if I buy into all of it, but like it's definitely keeps you open minded, and it changes your perspective on a lot of stuff, right? And then you dig into the Vatican, right? So if you ever go down that rabbit hole, like what's in the archives of the Vatican, they said it's about 7 miles underground. They said that they have aliens down there. They have the time machine that some priest created in the 800s that went back to the time you can actually go back and watch the crucifixion of Christ, that it actually existed and it was real and it happened. I don't know what's down there. I've never been, but people have said that there's all kinds of stuff in the Vatican. And on the upper echelon of the Vatican, I don't know if you ever saw the glass dome. If you've ever Googled it, there's images, but there's 200 seats, right? And it all goes around, and it's like, well, 200 seats and 200 fallen angels means that they'll have a place at the table. So what's going on, right? So it could just be a weird coincidence that there's 200 seats at a table at the Vatican for no reason, or if you believe in the theory that the Lucifer was cast out of heaven and he had 199 of his soldiers with him, it kind of makes sense. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I don't know, right? But obviously, what I've learned to grow up into the Catholic Church and believing, and then hearing different priests talk about what's actually happening and what's going on with the modern day Catholic Church, it kind of makes you wonder: are they the same group of people that we once thought they were? My answer is no, right? So my perspectives have changed a lot. My ideas have changed a lot. My thought process has changed a lot. But obviously, I still believe in God and Jesus, and I'm still Catholic. But I also, there are a lot of issues that I have now with the way that this information is being presented, number one, and number two, what is really real, because we'll never know, right? I guess you find out when you go to the next realm, right? So we're obviously in a shell here on Earth, right? And we have our physical bodies, but like it's what's here on Earth isn't what's next, right? So I guess we find out when we cross that plane, right?
Yeah. So now that we're on this topic, If you got to go to any forbidden place, where are you going to go to first? Place
I
that's
would
completely off limits, but you want to go to it.
I would pick the Vatican. I would say, let me see what's in the archives. If I can go down and see them all and actually see what's in there. There was some German philosopher, I think it was like 150 or 200 years ago, actually went down there and they told him you could see everything, you can do everything, but you can't take notes, you can't write anything down. It's all has to be memory. And he remembered a lot of stuff that was down there, and he wrote a book about it, what was actually down there. And he said everything that was there is the real, the the that that they actually have a demon down there that's chained up. They don't know if it's Lucifer or not, but he's in chains and he's kept down there. They had the God theory about the time travel. He said that there were a ton of ancient books that were left out of the Bible that were transcribed that never made it into the original Bible, the King James version, the whatever. So I would like to see that, to see what actually is really down there, and if what they say actually exists. Um, Obviously, they have said that there are worlds underneath our worlds that we don't know exist. So
Yeah.
bridges and tunnels and cities that famous people and the elites can go to that we'll never be able to see, and that's how they're able to travel from New York to LA in about 2 hours, when no plane could ever travel that fast, but they can go in a high-speed train through a tube and get there super quick. So what they can experience, what we can experience, are totally different worlds, right? What's underneath our world, we don't even know exists. And I guarantee you, there's probably cities and palaces and homes, and what we see above ground is probably the same thing about 20 miles underground that we'll never see.
That we know of. That we know of.
I mean,
I mean,
people
you
say
never
these things,
know.
right? That they um, just recently, right, with the whole Epstein thing, right? All these underground tunnels in Hollywood that say they exist, that go from the Playboy Mansion all the way to these other people's houses that they were able to. I don't know. I've never been to the Playboy Mansion, but there has to be some truth to that, or people wouldn't say they existed, right? People aren't just going to make it up that there's tunnels underground that go to other people's mansions. It has to exist if people are saying it, right?
Yeah.
So
I
there
mean,
has to be some truth to that. Now, I don't know. Hollywood's its own animal, right? And we all kind of hear the stories that come in and out of there. But the reality of the situation is that there has to be some truth to every conspiracy, right? So if there are underground tunnels, if there are connecting houses, if there are, somebody somewhere just didn't make it up, right? Somebody had to have seen something or heard something in order to say it, to make it real. So all I'm saying is just kind of keep an open mind up to what's out there and what is real and what's not real, and what we're being told and what we were force fed as kids to, is the truth, right? And I'm just more now at 45 years old. I have a much more open mind than I did at 25, than I did at 15, right? So I'm not saying that there's truths to any of this, but if you don't keep an open mind to what is out there, or the possibility of stuff being out there, you're just holding yourself back.
yes. Finally, somebody said that. Because that's the truth. It's like you have to have an open mind to live in today's society,
You
today's
know,
world. Because
you
if you
know,
don't, man, I mean, you're closed
yeah,
minded. The world's going to be a very confusing place. But if you're
right.
open
And
minded
it's
and you're open to ideas, you're like, hey, wait a minute,
yeah,
this does
and
make
it's
sense.
and it's funny, Chris, too, to be honest with you, is that, like, one of the things two of the topics that I always keep off my podcast are religion and politics. I try to avoid that at all costs, just because I don't want to, disassociate myself from anybody who has certain beliefs or certain wisdoms. But at some point, I think that you need to talk about it, and you have to have a discussion about it, right? Because even our modern day political system, right? Like, I don't believe in politics anymore, right? People ask me, are you Republican or Democrat? And I'm neither, right? Like, I am so jaded about politics now that it's like, I think it's us against them, right? It's the elites versus the regular people, and what they hold over our heads, right? We're modern day slaves, right? We go to work every day to make money to pay for somebody else's expenses, right? It's slavery at its finest, and we're just too dumb to realize it. And and there's a couple people on podcasts that I've watched that have made the point that say like we are nothing but modern day slaves. The working class are modern day slaves to the system, and I kind of believe that now, even though I have a good job and I like what I do, right? And I'm able to have a nice house and cars and all the luxury items that I could ever want. But at the same time, it's like, am I really happy, or am I just buying into something that makes somebody else more wealthy, right? Do I need the things that I have? Maybe. But am I buying something that somebody else is selling to make them more money than I'm getting enjoyment out of it? Most definitely, right? And it's kind of one of those things that's hard to wrap your head around, because the reality of the circumstance is that you're in a world now where you're being sold products that you think matter, but they really don't, right? And
Don't.
so it's kind of a buyer consumer world, and we're all flaws in it. But like, look at cars, right? Everybody out there wants the best, newest car, myself included, right? Like, I lease, I always get a new truck every 3 years, right? The best of the best, right? But the reality is do I need that? No. But if I buy a truck, I'm making somebody else rich, right? I'm putting money in somebody else's pocket, which is consumerism and capitalism, which is great. I mean, that's what we're founded on. But the reality is I look around my house and I look at all the stuff on my wall and everything that I have that kind of makes me smile and happy. Does it fulfill my enrichment buying it? Maybe temporary, but in the long run, I'm like, well, if I would have saved that $50, or I would have saved that $100, or that $200, or whatever it was, right? And you just kind of look at it, and we're all guilty of it, right? But the reality is now is that when you make yourself happy, is it permanent happiness or temporary happiness, right? And my goal in life is to make it permanent happiness, right? Do the things that put a smile on my face all the time, right? Having close relationships with people that matter, right? Having personal interactions. The trucks, the houses, the cars, they could all come and go, right? But what matters the most is that if you can look in the mirror and smile and say that you're generally happy and you've done the best you can and you try to be a good human, that's to me matters than any amount of money that you have in your pocket, whatever car you're driving, whatever watch you have on, whatever clothes you're wearing, whatever shoes you're wearing. None of that matters. You can't take it with you in that anyways, right? And it's just kind of, it's all materialistic stuff that is gonna, I look at all my belongings, right? Everything I got hanging up, everything I've collected over the years, all the hunts of records that I found that make me happy, and that, like, all the stuff I have, this is all going to end up in a pawn shop somewhere when I go, right? It's going to be in a yard sale, or it's going to end up in somebody else's house, in somebody else's collection. I can't take it with me. I have no one to pass it on to. All it is basically going to be either junk, it's going to end up in a landfill somewhere, or somebody else is going to enjoy what I had. And that's the reality of it, right? And it's grim, but it's just kind of the things that they're all temporary happiness, right? It's not permanent happiness. And my goal now is to try to find permanent happiness, right? Like the things that I could do, life experiences, things that I see, things that I read, people that I talk to, people that I come across, that really brings me true enjoyment. So having the podcast, going kind of full circle, is what brings me joy, is because I get to interact with people and I get to form real friendships and real communication and try to help somebody who might be watching that might have said, listen, if it wasn't for you and your words, I might have, taken a different trajectory in my life. And that's kind of, where that stems from. And I'll tell a story real quick, if you got time. But
Yeah, go ahead.
so in my podcast journey, actually, before I started a podcast, like I said, my first podcast that I ever watched was the Cleared Hot podcast with Andy Stumpf. And he had a guy named Brian Flake on his, or I'm sorry, Kevin Flake on his show. And I was watching his story, and he had gotten shot in the abdomen in Iraq. It went through his abdomen, through his tip, and basically out his ass, right? So the bullet shot through him. And his recovery was the same as my recovery, except I had an abscess and he had gotten shot. And there was a time where I didn't think I was going to live, right? I was like, this is it. This is my calling card, right? I'm not going to recover from this. I'm not able to do the stuff I was able to do before. I'm lying in a bed. I can't move. I'm packed with bandages and gauze and all kinds of stuff to keep my body intact from not like falling out of itself. And so I see Kevin on the show, and I happen to reach out to him on social media. And I was like, Kevin, I was like, I know you don't know me at all. I said, but we have kind of the same injuries. We just had them at different times and different causes, but the same effect. And I was like, if you could talk to me about your recovery and what you did to get better, I'd appreciate it because I'm at a very low point in my life, and I don't think I'm going to make it through this. So he responds back and goes, what do you got? And we're just back on Instagram, shooting the shit, talking like two dudes, right? I don't know him. He doesn't know me. So I basically tell him my story, and he goes, you're going to be okay. He goes, I recovered. He goes, I'm training to run the Boston Marathon. He goes, if I could do that, you can get through this. And I was like, I don't think I can. I was like, I think I'm on my deathbed, and I think this is it for me. He goes, you know what? I'm going to be driving from Boston to Pennsylvania. It's about a 5-hour drive. He goes, here's my number. Call me and we'll talk when I'm on the road. So Friday morning rolls around. It's about 9:30. He sends me a text. He goes, hey, I'm in my truck. I'm driving. Whenever you want to call, go ahead and call. So I said, okay, about 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm laying in bed. I'm doing my best to sit up to actually like have a conversation with him. We were on the phone for about 4 hours, and we talked
Wow.
about everything from life to family to recovery to what he did in the military to what I do in law enforcement to so I've told him before, and I know he doesn't probably think it, but if I didn't have that conversation with Kevin, he saved my life that day because I was ready to throw in the towel. I was literally going to say, "Listen, I'm there's nothing more I can do to help myself. I'm basically going to have to deal with this for the rest of my life. I'm going to lose my career. I'm not going to be able to recover. I'm going to be half of what I was. I'm a shell of the person that I was." And his like thought walking me through everything and basically telling me to fight and don't give up and that you get strong and ever take one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at whatever you got to do to get through it. And so it was a very powerful thing, and I'll never forget that conversation for as long as I live with Kevin. And but like it's the little things like that. He didn't have to take his time out of his day to talk to a stranger he never met before, and he did it. And without him, I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you. So it's that kind of stuff that makes me start to realize the power of human interaction and the power of the human spirit, right? This guy took his time out of training for, a marathon, running the Green Beret Foundation, running his non for profits, starting his own business, took the time out of his busy ass schedule to talk to me for a few hours about how I could see tomorrow. So stuff like that was very moving to me, and Kevin will always be in my memory and in my heart for that. And like I said, without talking to him, I don't know if I'd still be sitting here right now because I was probably a day away from just throwing in the towel and being like, this is my exit, and I'm not going to get better in that. And from that next day, I fought a little harder, and I fought a little harder, and I fought a little harder to get where I'm at now, which is basically about 85% of what I once was, right? I've lost some intestine and some colon and some lining and some stuff, but if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I'd be here. So it's that little stuff like that that matters to me. So that's what is truly important. And so that's why starting the podcast meant something to me and meant more to me than just having a conversation with some stranger that I never met. Now I want to help them and I want to get them the platform that they need. And if I can use my little bit of, you know, attitude and a little bit of my, social media presence to help them out, I'm more than happy to do that. So I would gladly take an hour and a half or 2 hours of my time to talk to somebody and get them maybe the notoriety or put them in connections with somebody who might actually be able to help them in the long run. And so that's, to me, doing the podcast fulfills my real happiness, like I talked about before. So all the stuff that's around me is nice. I look at all my pictures and, everybody I met and all my autographs and I smile. But helping somebody in life means more to me than anything on my wall or on my wrist or on my head or anything like that. So to 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 have the podcast is kind of a platform that I use to truly be able to help somebody if they need to and make the personal connections of, hey, I think you should talk to this person, they could help you. And I try to do that with all my guests. So if you reached out to me after this and said, hey, listen, I'm looking for somebody to be on my podcast, who do you suggest? I'll go through my list and say, hey, get this person on, get this person on, get this person on. right? And have you get a different perspective on their story than I did, because I might have known them personally. You don't know them, so you get to ask the questions that you wouldn't be able to ask as a friend, because I kind of know their history, right? So it's a little bit
Yep.
different, but it's all about perspective. So that's kind of how I do it. And like I said, that's where my podcast, my baseline is getting somebody on my show, and then wherever it goes from there, it goes. So I have a little journal that I keep with me, and I kind of write like substandard of questions. I kind of always show this, but like, depending on like who I got on, I'll make notes, right? But I don't want to ask a yes no questions. I want to have a conversation. So I'll kind of do what you did, right? Like, tell us where you got started. How did you get into this? How do you do this? What makes you want to do this? What makes you want to keep pursuing this? An hour goes by like this, right? When you're talking to somebody and you're engaged in a good conversation, it's flowing, time ceases to exist, right?
Yep.
We've been on now
So
a little bit over an hour, and it seems like we've been talking for like 2 minutes, right?
yeah, that's what I love
So,
about doing this podcast, man.
yeah. So, and it's interesting, and for people who might not know about podcasting, or might have said, hey, I really want to start a podcast, but I don't know where to do. Before all of this happened, and all of my lighting and all of my background, I was a shell. I'd have my light on. I'd have like, it was terrible. It was awful. The lighting was real bad. My face would glow because the light would hit my face, and so I figured all this out. But all you really need is a phone and a will to do it. Really, I mean, if you want to start a podcast and you like talking to people, it's easy. Everything else will come in due time. None of this just happened overnight. This was 2 years of work for me to get to where I'm at now, and it's still growing. Right, I still have stuff that I want to do and change, but for right now, at least, if you want to start a podcast, it's will and determination. Right? People ask me.
What were you talking about?
I think just about the podcast, and helping people, and being able to share your story and help somebody else out that might need it. And then and like I said, getting into podcasting, I know a lot of people ask me, how did I do it, and I just started. So it's the best advice I can give you. If you want to do a podcast, do it.
All right. As we begin to wrap this thing up, man, I just want to simply say thank you for coming on the show and telling your story and telling everybody about how you started your podcast.
Yeah, no problem. I like I said, I hope it keeps growing. My goal is to ultimately, when I retire, make it my full-time gig. So I always ask everybody to like, share, and subscribe. It helps me out. And that's the big shout. That's what everyone kind of needs is numbers, right? It's the algorithm and the push out. And so if you can get there and start. It's a cool experience.
All right, I'll wrap this up with asking 3 random questions to you. The first question is, what is your favorite color?
Black. If you couldn't tell.
Black.
Yeah.
No, I didn't, man. I could not tell at all. All right, question number 2. If you could go back to any point in time, where would you go?
In the analog of history, or in my personal life?
Any time period.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I like the the kind of turn of the century. Would be kind of cool to see how everything happened from like 1850 to like 1901. Like that 50-year span would be kind of cool. It'd be kind of cool to go back to see the knights, right, and how that was. Like, go to old Rome and see how those soldiers fought and like that. It's an interesting question. I really don't have a specific answer. It definitely would probably predate the United States, though. So like definitely before 1776. I'd probably go back to the kind of the Renaissance. I think would be kind of cool, where you get your first art, your first music. People start coming into their own as humans, right? We kind of start experimenting with more stuff, kind of gets us on the track to where we are today. I think that would be a kind of cool time, right? To go to a concert and you see Beethoven and Mozart, right? And you see Da Vinci at his prime, right? And you're like, that'd be kind of cool.
I always have the same answer for that question too, because I'm like, well, there's a lot of stuff I'd like to see, like, because I'm a big history guy. I'm like a history nerd, so I'd kind of like to see like stuff unfold, like you said, go to concerts, seeing stuff for the first time. How did Mozart do? How did Beethoven do? Like his first show ever. Now that's something I'd like to see.
Yeah,
was he just a genius always, or was it just over time it developed?
Yeah, and I guess it depends on where you're at, though, right? Because, like, during that time, if you're not in Europe, you're basically a slave, or you're, trying to find, yourself too. So I guess it's a point in history, but it depends on where you're at in that point, right? So you go back to the medieval times, right? If you're not in Europe, if you're say in China or Japan, and you're still developing, right? You're kind of in the Ming's dynasty, you're at war, right? So you're not enjoying the luxuries of having the freedom to do what you want. So it all depends, right? It's perspective, I guess.
Yeah. Then I'm thinking to myself too, like just really playing it out in my mind, just to see myself dress up in different like stuff, so I'd look the part. That way, I'm not going back wearing like clothes like I am right now. But you would have to like disguise yourself every time you went somewhere. That way, nobody's looking at you like, who's this guy?
You'd probably imagine that, like, when you look at all of the pictures from that time period, right? Everything fits so well because everything was tailor made, right? So you want to get a shirt made, they measure you and they make a shirt. They didn't have stores, right? You just don't walk into a Macy's and say, oh, I want that shirt and tie, right? Someone was making it for you, right? So someone put their hard work and effort into actually building it for you. So it'd be kind of cool to see, right? You walk into, if you can afford it, walk into a store and buy a shirt that's custom made for you. Try to do it today, it probably costs you $500-600.
Yeah, same like going to get a pair of shoes. You would have to go you'd be wearing the same shoes over and over. You have to keep finding that guy, man. And if he packs up like your barber does, then you got to find somebody else.
Right? Yeah.
Like I've been seeing this dude my whole life, now he's just gone.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. For the last question, I pass the mic over to you, and you're the podcast. You're used to doing this, so I'll let you ask me a question.
So, I guess in the grand scheme of things, what is the most personal benefit or enjoyment that you get out of your podcast?
Exactly what you said earlier. It's really just a fulfillment of hearing, everybody's story, and hearing like how we're, I've noticed since I've been doing this that we're all in the same boat, that we're all living this thing called life, and we're all living, having our own experiences. And it's nice to see, like you said earlier, where you have experienced something and you can relate to it. And you're like, so that's how you handled it, and this is how I handled it, and that's how I could have handled it, or how that person could have handled it, and it just would have worked out better for them. And then if you had that connection with that person at that time, that's kind of what I like about doing this, is people can relate to it. And then also I've had many guests come on and reach out to that person afterwards and say, your story actually really helped me out in my situation I'm currently going through. And to hear that from my guests, or sometimes even hear that from a fan of the show, it moves me. It's like that's why I enjoy doing this show.
Right. Now, just out of curiosity, do you get recognized in your community? Do people know who you are?
Oh, yes. All the time.
Okay. So I'm starting to grow, right? So as I start to go out, people start to recognize, because I have this sticker on my truck, and they're like, oh, you're the one fun guy, right? So it's kind of, obviously coworkers and family and stuff all know. But as you start to get out there and you put yourself out there more, people actually start to recognize you. So it's kind of a unique thing that you actually get that kind of perspective on things. So it's pretty cool.
That's the thing, because my wife, we'll be at the store, we'll be at a Walmart or something, and she somebody will come up to me and is like a random person, like a stranger, will be like, where do I know you from? I've seen you before. I don't know where, but you're Chris. I know that. You're Chris. Like, yeah, that's me. That's me.
Right, yeah.
And then I'm thinking to myself at the same time, like, did I meet them somewhere? Or is it from the show? They see me on, from being online, or is and the best part about it though is it's always positive stuff. People are always like, well, you're a positive dude, you're upbeat, you're uplifting, you're not spreading viruses throughout the internet. You're actually you're happy.
I definitely did with my podcast was I always wanted to be positive and uplifting and like get the most out of somebody. I never wanted to do the Howard Stern route and like railroad somebody or ask them like obscure questions or like and when I tell people that all the time, I'm like, I want to put you in a positive light. I want people to see the best of you. I'm not going to ask you anything out of context or anything. Like, I'm not here to like, do any of that stuff. So I know that's a lot of people like that's their biggest fear when they come onto a podcast because they don't want to get asked those questions, right? They don't want to be asked all the obscure stuff. And so like I always keep it, like I said, more family orientated, and I try to make it positive as I can and like put their self in the best light that so the world could see them. But I know a lot of podcasts are the opposite, right? They want to talk about the negative stuff. They want to talk about, and then it's celebrity gossip and things like that. Like I could care less what a celebrity does, right? If I meet one, cool, but it doesn't. It's no like bearing to me, right? And I have a very different perspective of doing that now, right? Like, I'm not starstruck anymore. If I see somebody, I'm like, he's a dude like me, right? Like I don't like I'm not gonna fanboy out over somebody like and I it's weird because a lot of people still like have that like starstruckness, and I'm like, they're people like we are, right? Like, so talk to them like you would anybody else, right? They're not anything special. They're not held in just because they have more money in the bank than you doesn't mean that they're a better person than you. So that's kind of my
That's how I
perspective on
like.
things.
And that's what I've told people many times. Like people starting off for the first time on a podcast, they'll ask me about that. Like, what do you do when you get bigger names on the show? How do you feel about it? I'm like, just like anybody else. I don't see like any higher or any lower. They're just another person, just another human being.
All of their stuff, right? Like, for example, like when I had Matt on, Matt is struggling hardcore with having the finances that he once had, being on top of the world as one of the biggest rock stars, known for his exploits in the music business, to basically struggling now, right? And it's like, it's not a fall from grace because if you didn't be there in the first place, you wouldn't have fallen, right? So I don't look at it from that perspective. But like, here's a guy that's played in front of hundreds of thousands of people worldwide and has seen the world and done all this stuff. But to him, he's like, I want to go back to those days. And I'm like, but you have those days to fall back on, because most people will never experience that. They wouldn't know what it's like to be around those kind of people and like in those meetings and in those offices talking about getting a record deal and a contract and selling copies and, going on tour. And like most people would dream about that, right? Like that's most people's dream, is to play in front of a million people, right? And he got a chance to do it. So it's perspective, right? It's like his attitude is like, I'm not where I once was, but I was like, you were there and you could tell that story that only a small percentage of the world could ever tell. You're in that group. Yeah.
We're doing it currently right now.
Right. And so it's interesting to see their side of things, right? Because when you talk to somebody like that, you think that they're riding high all the time and that, they have this elaborate life and that they saved all their money and that they're millions of dollars. Like, when it's not coming in, it's not coming in. It goes away. And that's kind of where he is now. And he's like, he talks about the woes of going through that, but it's like, if you've never lived it, he was talking about his first video shoot ever. His first music video was in a $40 million Beverly Hills mansion. And he had the run of the place for 2 weeks while he was filming the video. Most people would never see that. They can't get past the gate. They can't even get on Mulholland, let alone to get up into the hills to get to that point. And this guy's living in that luxury, right? So it's perspective. It's what you have accomplished in your life, right? Now, I'm a typical guy, right? I watch YouTube. I love watching producer Michael, and he takes you all through Hollywood Hills and goes through these $40-50 million mansions. That's a pipe dream for most of us, right? The average person can't afford a $300,000 house, let alone a $30 million house. But it's cool to see, because if I ever won the lottery, that's where I'd go, right?
You'd go out to California?
I'd go to Malibu in a heartbeat. The ocean is my backyard with mountain views. I don't think you can beat it. I'll pay the 30% tax. I don't care at that point.
See, I think that's the difference between me and like most people, is like, that's not my dream. I couldn't see myself living in a mansion or anything like that. And maybe I'm just too normal. I'd rather. I love.
Obviously, right? But that's the dream, right? Like you're able to dream about that kind of stuff, right? The reality is that it's never going to happen, but it's nice to think about if you ever were in a position where you had that. Now, I always said, right, if I won a big lottery, I would help everybody I could, right? All my friends would be instant millionaires, right? Like I'd give it out like candy because you can't take it with you. So let everybody else enjoy the ride. That's how I would be. But I would probably pick that as my location to be. I've seen some of those houses, and it's a different world, and it's not the LA that like you're used to seeing on TV. Even the people that still live in Beverly Hills, right? They're far from the inner city LA that we know and see on TV, right? They're in a gated mansion on a gated community in a gated, like you can't even get on the street to get up into those to see it, right? So it's a different world. They're way in a different spot. But yeah, I would. And one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid was Entourage. I don't know if you've ever watched Entourage. Um, but it's like to live like that would be cool, right? Go to those Hollywood parties, right? Go to those beach mansions and have fun, right? They live the carefree lifestyle, and it was always the cool thing that Vince always used to stay in the show. Adrian Garnier played Vincent Chase on the show. He said, "I came from nothing. If I go back to nothing, at least I get to experience it." And like, what an attitude to have, right? Because if you come from nothing and you get all the fame and wealth in the world, and you get to live it, you don't if you lose it, you go back to where you were. It's not anything. It's just like you said, I don't see myself living in a mansion. Put $30 million in your bank account, and you'd have a different perspective on where you'd want to be and what you'd want to do. Like I
No,
said,
I'm not like. Let me clarify. I'm not dissing anybody that has that dream.
No,
Just
I
for
don't
me,
either.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a mansion. It's not that I couldn't see myself in a mansion. I just don't want to be in a mansion. I'd rather live in a regular house, and I'd be in a place that has like beautiful landscaping. I like to go see Montana or somewhere like that, Nashville.
Yeah, and again, you see some of those beautiful homes they built in Utah, right, and in Montana and Wyoming. Those houses, by default, you're gonna have a business person that's gonna tell you to do it, because if not, the government's gonna take it. And you're gonna do it anyway, so you might as well just. But I would pick the beach and the mountains.
Maybe as like for me, maybe it'd be a place to visit, like have like a side home there, but actually
And I
live
love
there.
California, right? Like I'm from the Midwest, and like California, traveling there, like I don't know if you've ever been, but it's a beautiful state. I mean, it really is, right? You get the best of both worlds. You get the most consistent weather. Nothing really ever happens. Yeah, earthquakes every once in a while, mudslides every once in a while. It never rains, so I don't really ever get that. Most of the flooding comes from a flash storm, but I mean, it's gorgeous. It really is beautiful. Like, and I'd love to wake up every morning and see palm trees and never see snow again. So.
Yeah, especially how it's been going on around here, man.
Right. And we're coming from the Midwest, right? Like, it's just it's gloom and doom here, right? Like our summers are nice, but they're quick. Our winters are long and dragged out, and it's just bitter cold. And the snow, and like, some people are used to it and say they can see themselves living without it. When I retire, I'm going south. I don't want to see cold and snow again. So I could definitely live without it. Yeah.
Done with it. I don't want to see it anymore.
Right.
We don't even get a spring here, guys. If you're watching this from California, we don't get spring here. It goes winter, summer,
and
maybe 2 days of
it
fall.
can happen in the same day. It goes from 80 to 50 and then back to 80 again, and stays that way. And then the drop off in the fall is the same way too. We don't have transitions anymore. It stays nice through October. Halloween was bitter cold, and then it went right into winter. We had our first snowfall in November.
So if you see a guy wearing a sweater and some khaki shorts, it's because he don't know what to dress for. He doesn't know if it's going to be hot that day or if it's going to be cold that day. That's Ohio for you.
You'd rather layer up on top than on the
Chicago.
bottom. That's how it is, right? You can always take a hoodie off. You can't if you wear shorts and t-shirt and you don't have one, then you need one. So that's why everyone does that.
The Midwest for you guys.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, I guess that does it, everybody. I'm sorry. The show's over. It's done. It's over.
Hey, all good things have to come to an end, but it won't be the last. Well, I'll have you on mine, and we'll talk again. Or if you ever want me back on as a guest, I'll be more than happy to.
Yeah, yeah. Next time you see me, I'll be on his show.
Yeah, right. So.
But this is Chris. That's Mac. Go watch his show next. Until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This is the Tell Me Your Story podcast. Real stories, real lives, real people. Peace out.
Everybody next time.